Talk about the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is very small. It makes up about 0.3% of the total brain. It is a very important part of the CNS. It is essential for life. It controls the autonomic nervous system and the endocrine system and also the body homeostasis. It lies in the center of the limbic system. It is a part of the limbic system. It is the site of numerous converging and diverging neuronal pathways and creates adequate blood supply. It is able to sample the blood chemistry. Let's talk about it in detail. It is a part of the diencephalon, so it is going to extend from the region of the optic chiasma towards the caudal border of the mammary body. So let's talk about its boundaries now. And clearly we're going to have the optic chiasma and the lamina terminalis. So you can remember it with LO. And then posteriorly, we're going to have mammillary bodies as well as the tegmentum of the midbrain. And laterally, we're going to have the internal capsule. If we talk about anteriorly to posteriorly, we're going to see the optic chiasma, the tuber cinereum, the infundibulum, and the mammillary bodies, OTIM. Okay, now let's talk about the preoptic area, which is very important for MCU point of view as well. So preoptic area is situated anterior to the hypothalamus, and it is important for functional reasons. It is going to extend from the optic chiasma towards the lamina terminalis and then the anterior commissure, OLA. It is referred to as the preoptic area. Now let's talk about the relation of the hypothalamus to the third ventricle. It is going to be related to the floor of the third ventricle as well as the inferior part of the lateral wall of the third ventricle. Now let's talk about the hypothalamic nuclei. So microscopically, the hypothalamus is going to be composed of small nerve cells which are arranged in groups of nuclei, and many of which are not clearly segregated from one another. For functional reasons, preoptic area is going to be included as a part of the hypothalamus for purposes of description. We are going to divide the nuclei by an imaginary parasagittal plane into medial and lateral zones, and within the plane, we're going to have the F and M, which are the columns of the fornix, as well as the mammillothalamic tract. Now let's talk about the medial zone. So what are the nuclei that lie anteriorly to posteriorly here? So for that, I have a mnemonic for you guys, which is POS PD VIP or POS PD VIP. For the P, I have the preoptic nuclei. A is for the anterior nucleus. S is for the suprachiasmatic nucleus. P is for the paraventricular nucleus. D is for the dorsomedial nucleus. V is for the ventromedial nucleus. I is for the infundibular nucleus. And P again is for the posterior nuclei. Here you can see all of them in detail anteriorly to posteriorly. Infundibular nucleus is also called the arcuate nucleus. Now let's talk about the lateral zone. I have PS square LTL nuclei. Or we can remember, please send someone lost to lateral. This is also a mnemonic. Now let's talk about the nuclei that are going to rise anteriorly to posteriorly. First of all, we have the preoptic nucleus, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, then we have the supraoptic nucleus, and then we're going to have the lateral nucleus, then we have the tubero-mammillary nucleus, and then at last we're going to have the lateral tuberal nucleus. Some of the nuclei are going to be present in both of the zones, lateral and medial both zones. These are the preoptic nucleus, the suprachiasmatic, and the mammillary nuclei for the lines of communications of the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is going to form nervous connections, and it is going to be connected through the bloodstream and the CSF or the cerebrospinal fluid. Neurons of the hypothalamic nuclei will respond and exert their controls through the same routes. CSF may serve as a conduit between the neurosecretory cells of the hypothalamus and the distant sides of the brain. So we're going to have 9 afferent connections and only 3 efferent connections are going to be there. The afferent and efferent nerve connections of the hypothalamus. First of all, let's talk about the afferents. Afferent fibers are going to arise from the, for you guys, SOVCHAATT. So what is S for? S is for the somatic and visceral, the pathway of medial and spinal lemniscate, tractus solitarius, and reticular formation. For that, I have a mnemonic of Mr. So you're going to remember M, S, T, and R of Mr. for that. So what is the origin of that? Somatic and visceral structures, and their destination is the hypothalamus, of course. Now let's talk about the olfactory pathway. So the olfactory pathway, as you know, it is going to arise from olfactory mucous membrane, and this pathway is that of the MFB or the medial forebrain bundle, and it is going to lead to the hypothalamic nuclei as well. Now let's talk about something that starts with the V. V is for the visual pathway, which comes from the retina. It is going to lead to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, important MCQ. Corticohypothalamic pathway. It is going to arise from the frontal lobe of the cerebral cortex, and it is going to lead towards the hypothalamus. Now let's talk about hippocampohypothalamic fibers, possibly main output pathway of the limbic system. They're going to arise from hippocampus, and they are going to enter the nuclei of the mammillary body through the fornix. Now let's talk about the amygdalohypothalamic fibers. They're going to come from the amygdala, and they're going to travel towards the hypothalamic nuclei through the SMT or stria medullaris thalami. Now let's talk about thalamohypothalamic fibers. So they are going to come from the dorsomedial and midline nuclei of the thalamus or DM nuclei of the thalamus. They're going to lead to the hypothalamus as well. Now let's talk about the auditory fibers, which are going to come from inner ear and going to lead towards the hypothalamic nuclei. And now let's talk about the tegmental fibers, which are going to come from the tegment of the midbrain and going to lead towards the hypothalamic nuclei. Now let's talk about the efferents. So first of all, for the efferents, you're going to have the descending fibers in the reticular formation towards the brainstem and the spinal cord. This is something that you have to remember. And then we have the mammillothalamic tract, and then we have the mammilotegmental tract, and then we have other pathways like that of the limbic system. So for the descending fibers in reticular formation towards the brainstem and the spinal cord, they are going to come from Hall and P. So preoptic nucleus and posterior, anterior, and lateral nuclei of the hypothalamus. They are going to lead towards the CSP, which is the craniosacral part of the parasympathetic nervous system, and the TL of the sympathetic nervous system, or the thoracolumbar part of the sympathetic nervous system. Now let's talk about the mammillothalamic tract. They're going to rise from mammillary body. They're going to lead to the thalamus, anterior nucleus, and they are related in the cingulate gyrus. Now let's talk about mammilotegmental tract, which is going to come from the mammillary body nuclei and going to lead to the tegmentum of the midbrain through the reticular formation. Limbic pathways ones are going to come from the hypothalamus and going to lead to the limbic system. Let's talk about 2 ways in which the pituitary gland is going to be connected to the hypothalamus. First way is through the hypothalamo-hypophyseal system, and the second way is through the hypophyseal portal system. So now let's talk about the hypophyseal hypothalamo-hypophyseal system. So nerve fibers are going to travel from the SP and they're going to travel towards the P. So they're going to come from the supraoptic and paraventricular nucleus. They're going to go towards the posterior lobe of the hypophysis. And now secondly, we have the hypophyseal portal system. So blood vessels are going to connect the sinusoids with the median eminence S and M, and they are also going to connect infundibulum with the anterior lobe IA. Now let's talk about hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. So the hormones related to this are the vasopressin and the oxytocin. They are going to be synthesized in the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei respectively, and they are going to travel through the carrier proteins or neurophysins towards the posterior lobe. So hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract is related to posterior lobe. Vasopressin is produced in the nerve cells of supraoptic nucleus and it causes vasoconstriction. However, the oxytocin is going to be produced by paraventricular nuclei. We're going to discuss that later. Now let's talk about the hypophyseal portal system. Here, the neurosecretory cells are going to be situated in the medial zone. However, hypothalamic hypophyseal system was related to the lateral zone. So in the hypophyseal portal system, hypothalamus are responsible for the production of releasing hormones as well as release inhibitory hormones. They are going to be packed into granules and transported along the axons of these cells into median eminence as well as infundibulum, and from the sinusoids towards the median eminence and from the infundibulum towards the granules are released by exocytosis onto fenestrated capillaries at the upper end of hypophyseal portal system. Now let's talk about hypophyseal portal system. So here we are going to have superior hypophyseal arteries as well as inferior hypophyseal arteries. Superior hypophyseal arteries are going to be a branch of internal carotid artery. They are going to enter median eminence, and here they are going to divide into tuft of capillaries. Portal vein is going to divide into sinusoids. So they are going to divide into vascular sinusoids present between secretory cells of anterior lobe. Portal system has releasing hormones and release inhibitory hormones. So now let's talk about the releasing hormones, which are GFALT. G is for the growth hormone, F is for FSH, A is for ACTH, and L is for LH, and T is for TSH. And for the inhibitory hormones, we have MSH as well as prolactin. Now let's talk about them in detail. So please remember PGC-GLT for a whole table. So P is for the prolactin releasing hormone as well as prolactin inhibitory hormone. G is for the growth hormone releasing hormone as well as growth hormone inhibitory hormone. C is for CRH or corticotropin releasing hormone. L is for the luteinizing hormone releasing hormone or LHRH, and T is for the TRH or thyrotropin releasing hormone. So what is GHRH going to do? It is going to stimulate the linear growth in epiphyseal cartilages. GHIH is going to reduce the linear growth in epiphyseal cartilages. Prolactin releasing hormone is going to stimulate lactogenesis, and PIH is going to reduce lactogenesis. All of them are in the hypothalamus. CRH is going to stimulate the renal gland to produce corticosteroids and sex hormones, and thyrotropin releasing hormone is going to stimulate thyroid gland to produce thyroxine, and LHRH is going to stimulate ovarian follicles to produce estrogen and progesterone. Now let's talk about the anterior pituitary hormones. So just to move out from here, we're gonna get growth hormone, prolactin, adrenocorticotropic hormone instead of CRH, and TSH and LH and FSH for LHRH. What are the functions of main hypothalamic nuclei? So for this, please remember that we are gonna have a supraoptic nucleus, which is responsible for the production of ADH, and then we are gonna have paraventricular nucleus for oxytocin. Also, we are going to have suprachiasmatic nucleus for circadian rhythm control. Now let's talk about the real stuff. So we have preoptic and anterior nuclei, which is going to control the parasympathetic system, and we are going to have posterior and lateral nuclei, which is for the sympathetic system. Then we are going to have anterior, posterior, lateral, and medial hypothalamic nuclei. The anterior hypothalamic nuclei is going to be involved in the response to heat, and posterior hypothalamic nuclei is responsible for response to cold. Lateral hypothalamic nuclei is going to initiate eating and increase the intake of food or hunger center. Medial hypothalamic nuclei is the satiety center. It is going to inhibit eating and reduce the intake of food. Lateral hypothalamic nucleus is also the thirst center. It is also going to increase the water intake. GHRH is going to come from the arcuate nucleus or infundibulum nucleus. And growth hormone and inhibitory hormone is going to come from suprachiasmatic nucleus. And CRH and TRH are going to come from paraventricular nuclei. TRH is also going to come from the dorsomedial nucleus. LHRH is going to come from preoptic and anterior nuclei. Stimulation of the lateral region of the hypothalamus is going to initiate the feeling of hunger and result in increase in food intake. There is a lesion here. Then what is going to result? It is going to result in anorexia, and lateral region is the hunger center. And if we talk about the medial region is the satiety center. If there is a lesion here, the person is going to become massive and medial. Bilateral destruction of this is going to result in voracious appetite and extreme obesity. Now let's talk about the emotion and behavior. Their function of the hypothalamus limbic system and the prefrontal cortex as well. Some authorities believe that hypothalamus is the integrator of different information received from other areas of the nervous system, and it brings about the physical expression of emotion. It can produce an increase in the heart rate. It elevates the blood pressure, causes dryness, the mouth, flushing or pallor of the skin, and sweating as well. It can often produce a massive peristaltic activity of the GID. Stimulation of the lateral hypothalamic nuclei may cause the symptoms and signs of rage, whereas lesions of these are gonna lead to tameness or passivity. However, stimulation of the ventromedial nucleus are going to cause passivity, whereas lesions for this nuclei are going to lead to rage.